from MVD and Kit Parker Films and Sabucat, in cooperation with the UCLA Film and Television Archive, is Laurel and Hardy, The Definitive Restorations 2. This is the second, if you know how numbers work, compilation of Laurel and Hardy comedy shorts that this company has put out, this restoration team has put out, and boy, is this fun. I'm a huge Laurel and Hardy fan, have been since I was a kid. I love classic comedy teams, the old classic comedy shorts, and to get really nice editions of these with copious extras is always welcome. Now, I will admit, I have the first set of these, but I never worked my way all the way through it. At some point I will, and I'll do a review of that. But I also have the previous edition that was released years ago on DVD that was like the book that had like everything. It was all the shorts. It was the alternate language versions of the shorts. If you don't know this, Laurel and Hardy and some other people in the early days of sound wanted, people in other countries, they didn't necessarily want dubbed. Sound was a new thing. Talkies were a new thing. They didn't want subtitles. They wanted something in their language. So certain things were shot, much like the Spanish Dracula, which was shot after the Bela Lugosi Dracula. People went home during the day. A Spanish cast and crew came in and shot a Spanish language version. Some of Hal Roach's stuff did that, where Laurel and Hardy were speaking phonetic Spanish, German, and maybe French, and the rest of the cast were native speakers of that country. No, those are not on here, unfortunately, but the versions, if you find that DVD set, they are. So anyway, I'm not here to talk about that other set. I'm here to talk about this one. 2 discs, 2 Blu-rays, and I'll tell you what's on them. I won't break down the plots of everything. That's more for your discovery, but I might occasionally. So what we have here is this. Each disc has 4 shorts on it with commentaries, with extras. So disc 1, we'll just go through it. Disc 1, and this is also all region. So between Baltimore and Botswana, wherever you throw this into a player, it'll just play. So that's really cool. Short subjects, disc 1. It's breaking down into these categories. Short subjects, we have Men of War from 1929. It is 20 minutes. And a lot of these open up with credits, restoration credits, and credits that may give you a little insight as to what's unique or what's been fixed with these. Apparently, it restores this to its original Vitaphone aspect ratio for the first time. So like 20 minutes of the image had been cropped in all versions since the original release, because Vitaphone was a sound system that was not sound on the film print. Film prints eventually would develop sound that had the little, if you've ever seen little squiggles on the side of the frame that an optical reader would be able to decode, or little slots on the script. There were various ways that the soundtrack, the film frame actually kind of shrunk over time. The image part of the film frame stayed the same, 35 millimeter, but over time, the image field shrunk a little to afford space for a mag track, which was basically audio tape strip along the side, or optical track, or DTS track, or whatever. Eventually, many tracks got squeezed on there. But the original release of this was Vitaphone, which was, the film was silent, and there'd be literally a record that they would play along with it. So God help you if you ever have to splice that film, because it's never going to stay in sync after that. But if it was everything went right, it would, you drop the needle and show the film at the same time, and it would stay in sync. So once film audio, on-film audio came in with later re-releases, they had to crop some of the image of the film, of the movie, what you would be seeing visually, to fit the soundtrack on there. So this is the first time since like 1929 anybody has actually seen the entire image for the Men of War short like it was supposed to be seen. So this also has James Finlayson in it, if you know who he is, if you're a fan of these things. He's the guy who always had a bushy mustache, and he was always like, he was, that's a James, for free, I will throw in my James Finlayson. Perfect Day from 1929 is 20 minutes. They've restored the original ratio and soundtrack. Apparently in later reissues of some of these, they added music that played throughout, like that. A lot of the Laurel and Hardy shorts just had a running score that went under these. Originally, some of them didn't. So this goes back to the way it originally was. Perfect Day, 1937 reissue version of that previous short I mentioned, that has the soundtrack running through it in different titles. Blotto from 1930, you have the restored 1937 version, it's 26 minutes. You have a silent version with a piano score. Some of these, 1930 was still so close to the end of the silent era, not all theaters had converted over to sound, that they occasionally still did send out silent versions for, I think this was maybe for overseas, silent versions, maybe for England. So it is interesting to see how a Laurel and Hardy short plays with no dialogue, without their distinctive voices. I mean, they started in silence. For people who had been used to seeing them in silent films, seeing Blotto with no audio was just like, well, yeah, that's how these guys, that's how it always is. So for if you're like me and like most people here in this country who grew up watching them on TV, you never really saw the silent ones, and those are a novelty to see. So it's cool that they included that. And then you get Blotto from 1930, a version that's just the vocal and an effects track. So it's no music whatsoever. So it's interesting to kind of see it that way too. Bratz, you've got also the silent version of that, 20 minutes version. This says. From the notes, it was prep for overseas theaters that hadn't switched to sound. First minute was missing due to nitrate decomposition, so it's interesting to see that. It feels a little weird to not have the sound version of Bratz on here, and I don't have a recollection if that's on the previous set of these or not. Another Fine Mess from 1930, and then also another version of that with just the voice and effects without the music. Extras on disc 1 are commentary for Men of War by Richard W. Bann, commentary for Perfect Day by Randy Skredit. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Sorry, Randy. His work is very good. He literally wrote the book on Laurel and Hardy. Blotto commentary by Richard Bann, and another Fine Mess commentary by Richard Bann. Galleries, archival materials. This autoplays just silent with captions, which is cool because a lot of times there's no context for stills that you see on a DVD or a Blu-ray, and this has a nice little caption on the side or underneath. We have 7 minutes, Men of War, 7 minutes, Perfect Day, 8 minutes, Blotto, 7 minutes, the Blotto French version, 2.5 minutes, Bratz, 11 minutes, and another Fine Mess, 7 minutes. Disc 2, we have Dirty Work from 1933, that's 19 minutes. We have Going Bye-Bye from 1934, that's 21 minutes. Them Thar Hills from 1934, that's 20 minutes. I smiled because I'm remembering these shorts and they're so much fun. Tit for Tat from 1935 is 20 minutes. This is the only time I think that they did this. Maybe they said there was one other time, but I never knew any comedy short or comedy team to basically have any of these films be sequels to another or ever reference anything that happened in another one. And I was really surprised when this one did. So Them Thar Hills, the previous featurette on this disc, the previous short, comedy short, is where they go off into the hills. Hardy has a gouty foot. Apparently a gouty foot was a big problem back then because it happens in a couple of these. He has to go and get rest and relaxation and drink plenty of water, and they rent a trailer and they go off up into the hills, and comedic hilarity ensues when they meet another couple and things become a back and forth battle between the two pairs of people. In Tit for Tat from 1935, which is the next one after Them Thar Hills, they actually meet up with this couple again in a totally different scenario and make reference to it and continue sort of the battle that started in the previous film. I'd never known any comedy short to do that. Every Laurel and Hardy was made so that you can watch them anytime in any order and not feel like you missed anything. Three Stooges the same way. All of them, they all seem to exist independent of whatever happened to them in any other thing. So that was kind of cool. There are commentaries for all of those, again, by Randy Skredvit. Sorry, I'm mispronouncing your name, Randy. I meant to write it down phonetically because he says it, and I knew that if I was reading it, I would read it wrong because I always mangle names. So you're in very fine company with anybody, basically, with the, non-English name. It falls right into that. Extras include a short called Galaxy of Stars, which was a 1936 MGM promo film that basically touted the studio and the other films that were coming from MGM that season. It's 8 minutes. This is a version that was dubbed in French and subtitled in English, but it is sort of the framing device for this is original material and gags with Laurel and Hardy and, again, James Finlayson. So you don't hear their voices, but it's interesting to hear what the French voices for Laurel and Hardy were at the time because, as I learned, for the most part, in every country that wasn't the U.S., when there would be somebody who was basically the dubber for a certain actor, and then people became known for that. Like somebody became known as the Italian voice of Al Pacino or something like that. So it's interesting to hear what their voices were like, interpreted as in another country. Then There Goes My Heart, trailer from 1938. It's 4 minutes. It's Ed Sullivan, the Ed Sullivan Show, saying that he wrote this script and MGM has made a film of it and it was shot, in the MGM or the Hal Roach Studios. And there's a lot of behind the scenes footage and then some clips from the movie and everything. I did not detect Laurel and Hardy in this whatsoever. I think this is mostly notable here because it shows you the Hal Roach Studios around the time Laurel and Hardy was still working there. It is, as I said, 4 minutes, and there are then a sub-featurette of trailer outtakes that are basically B-roll from that are 4 minutes, which again, I detected no Laurel and Hardy in at all. But if you wanted to see what the studios look like, it's kind of cool. something called Ship's Reporter, which is apparently an ongoing featurette series. It's 6 minutes, and it was Laurel and Hardy in 1952 being interviewed by the ship's reporter on the Queen Mary. This Is Your Life, Laurel and Hardy. This is something I'd seen a few times over the years. Everything on this is restored, by the way, so everything on this, for the most part, looks really good. It is 29 minutes, and it's the old Ralph Edwards show where they surprise Laurel and Hardy in a hotel very close to the studio, and then basically bring all these people from their life back to talk about them growing up and their various milestones in life. So it's very fun. It's very sweet to see them as themselves. They do a little bits of business here and there. It's pretty late period Laurel and Hardy. I'm pretty sure that Oliver Hardy did not live much longer after this. So it is very sweet to see them together. And as they say in there, you get to learn a little about their relationship. And they say that, they never had a problem with each other. They were very good friends. And it's just cool seeing them hanging out. Same with the ship's reporter, really, in their street clothes, non-bowler hats. They have trailers on this for Pardon Us. It's the German version, 2 minutes. Fra Diavolo, which they say is in the This Is Your Life. They sort of cite that as maybe the favorite film that they made together. The British version of that is 2 minutes. Bohemian Girl, 2 minutes. These are trailers mostly for their features. Short Subject wouldn't have had a trailer. Our Relations, it's a minute long, and it looks weird. Like, I have a sizable TV, and looking at it, the motion is a little jerky and a little hazy, and it kind of looks like maybe it was AI enhanced. Maybe this came from a really bad tape master or something, but it doesn't look right. It was weird. I'd love to know. And I haven't read the booklet that comes with this yet, which I'll show you when I show you the packaging. Maybe it gets into it in that. Then you have the trailer for Swiss Miss that's 2.5 minutes. And then you have galleries for Dirty Work, 8 minutes, Going Bio by 4 minutes. Them Thar Hills, 8 minutes, Tit for Tat, 7 minutes. Very cool information in those galleries. You get to see stills from posed on the set, publicity shots, posters, lobby cards, and then you get original reviews that were written in like a industry trade magazine by theater owners. Very short, like 1-sentence reviews saying, whether it's funny, how it compares to their other films, how it'll do with an audience, how their audience responded to it, which is just like this insight that you never get. So it's great. So if you don't know Laurel and Hardy, 12 minutes into this, I'll tell you, I'm presuming you're taking it as read. You know who they are. They were this comedy team in the silent era up into the sound era. They started in short subject comedies. They eventually went into features. They're iconic. They're hilarious. I was a gigantic Jerry Lewis fan, and when I got back into Laurel and Hardy after being a Jerry fan for so long, I saw how much Jerry Lewis lifted, borrowed, homaged, adapted from Stan Laurel, who he always talked about in very high praise, and who actually Stan Laurel used to consult with Jerry Lewis on some gags for his movies and things like that. They're wonderful. They're funny. They're timeless. Their stuff is still really funny. I love Stan Laurel's dumb guy character. I'm a huge fan of a good dumb guy character, one I've been playing all my life. I love Oliver Hardy and his little mannerisms and his way and his propriety, and when he gets angry and goes, and when he just takes to the camera, kills me every time. These are wonderful. I highly recommend any Laurel and Hardy. I know other companies are working on the Silence. The Sabucat and Kit Parker and MVD have been working on these soundies, the talkies, and they're really great. So here's what the packaging looks like. Vaguely similar to the first, front and back. It's a 2 Blu-ray set. As I mentioned, this is all region, so this will play anywhere in the world. You have the 2 discs with similar looking imagery there. And then you have a very substantial booklet that I wanted to read before I talked to you, but I also really wanted to get this review recorded. So it basically goes over the contents of all the Blu-rays, explains a little bit about what each of these extras are, like the Galaxy of Stars, There Goes My Heart, stuff like that. And then it has notes on preservation and restoration by Joseph of Sabucat, with a lot more stills from their private collections and publicity. You get production notes by Randy Skredvit on this, on each film on the set. You get, okay, so this does seriously delves into what the extras are all about. So my apologies for not reading that before I did this, but I was really excited to tell you about this because this is a relatively new release. It's great. If you've never seen Laurel and Hardy, do not feel bad about picking up volume 2 and diving right in because, as I said, they're all little unique moments in time. They look great. They look great. They sound great. And they are a window into a world that doesn't exist anymore. Granted, some of this was shot on studio sets at Hal Roach Studios, but some of it was really shot out in the streets of LA in that area or wherever Hal Roach Studios were located. And you get sequences like in Tit for Tat where they're inside a shop and you see all the grocery store and you see all the vintage original signage. So you can see Wrigley's Spearmint Gum advertising from the 30s. It's just, I love that stuff. Anytime there's manufactured products and shelves of logos, I always freeze the frame, or signage, I freeze the frame and look at it. And it's a cool window into, as I said, a world that doesn't exist anymore. So available now. Ooh, the earth moved. Available now on Blu-ray from MVD. Kit Parker, Sabu Cat, and the UCA Film and Television Archive is Laurel and Hardy, The Definitive Restorations 2.